Hi, I'm James McGuire, editor of Datamation, and our topic today is what's wrong with big data? Why isn't it perfect yet? Why isn't it as simple and fast as we'd like it to be? To talk about that, we've got three great experts. With us is Valentino Tereshko, technical program manager for big data at Google. Hello to you, Tino.
Hello.
You are there at the Googleplex today, correct?
Oh, I'm actually in Seattle right now.
You're in Seattle. Okay, so you never see Sergey walking down the halls ever.
I see a lot of Sundar, not so much Sergey.
Oh, okay, interesting. Also with us is Satyan Sangani, CEO of Elation. Hello to you, Satyan.
Hi, James. It's great to be here.
So give us the little 11-second elevator pitch. What does Elation do? I know that the tagline is Yelp for big data, but what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's relatively similar to Yelp or LinkedIn or Amazon or even to a certain extent Google. I think all of those are systems that allow you to understand a certain class of information. We help people inside of companies understand the data and the systems of data inside of their companies. And so, like Google, we crawl and scan those systems, and we look for what people are doing with the data and use that information, use that human activity trail to build a very, very rich catalog that people can update collaboratively, socially, and ask questions around. And why that's useful and relevant is because the world's only getting to be a more complex place. And so as analysts inside of companies try to mine more and more information for profit, getting to that information faster and more easily with context is the next critical problem.
Sounds good. Also with us is Mr. Mike Matchett, analyst with the Tenasia Group, all-around smart person. How are you doing, Mike?
Oh, good today. Good today. Thanks, James.
I know that you and I have done some deep dives with Hadoop and big data, so you're definitely one of the go-to people when it comes to big data. So the question is, what is the friction involved with big data? When you think about, it is sort of promised as this fairy dust. We're going to, sprinkle this fairy dust over our difficult questions. That our big data solution was going to give us these gleaming insights of information. We're all going to go off and earn $1 zillion with this great data. It hasn't always worked out that way. There's been a certain amount of confusion, even some backlash. So what is the friction all about it? In other words, how can we get more people using more data faster? Satyan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the promise of BI is really, very basic. People get these insights, and insights help you understand the true nature of a thing. That's sort of the definition of the term. And if you think about this notion of insight, it's really relevant to, you've got to have the right information with the right context, for the right person in the right moment. One person's insight is another person's learned fact 20 years ago, and another person's insight is something that somebody won't understand for another 20 years. And so having the right bit of data at the right points in time is really the critical thing. I think the problem is that the translation effort around understanding, mining, visualizing, and really just getting your hands around the data is itself a real problem. Data is built by computer systems. Computer systems are built by programmers using some very complicated algorithms and abstractions. And fundamentally, to get acquainted with the data, you have to understand where it came from, how it was produced, who's worked with it, what questions it can possibly answer. And all this stuff takes a lot of time, no different from somebody researching something in a library and trying to read up on it. It takes a lot of time. And so I think what we find is that people would love to get more insights, and nobody says that they want to be less insightful. But the reality is that there's only so much time in a day, and most people can't spend the time it takes to gather the knowledge to start developing these insights arbitrarily. And so for us to sort of build this kind of data-driven world that's going to make us these zillions of dollars that everybody has promised, I think there's a auxiliary reality that is that people have to figure out a way to lower the cost of learning about the data, to learn from the data.
You said it's lowered cost, and there's also a time factor, I think I heard in there as well. So it's a question of just letting the time pass, or us evolving and finding a lower cost solution?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, if you think about it, data, like, anything else has well, not like anything else, but like any information asset has a half-life. If you know what your customer is about to buy before they're going to buy it, that's really great. If you know about it 2 seconds after they make the purchase, not super useful. And so, the cost of information is one piece of it, and lowering that cost then presumably makes it faster and easier for you to get to that information. But you got to do both. If you don't have it just in time, in the right place, in the right form, not useful. Just opportunity goes away.
Tina, what's your view? How do we make this easier, and how do we eliminate some of the innate confusion involved with big data?
Well, I mostly agree with Satyan's points. Really, big data is difficult for three reasons. The current technology spectrum of big data is very, very expensive and very complex to leverage. It requires a lot of specialized talent that you may not have in your company and in your enterprise. And of course, big data carries a lot of uncertainty when it comes to value. Right? Folks think that they should have big data projects going on in their companies, but not always do they know what exactly that will mean in terms of value. Google has long been has a tradition of hiring really smart people and giving them very, very easy tooling to create numerous hypotheses and test them and reject them as quickly as possible. And so Google Cloud Platform is really the externalization of Google's tooling. And we feel like we have a really good story around giving folks tooling that allows them to operate at a really massive big data scale without the complexity and without the tinkering that is associated with traditional big data technologies.
But if you would advise some theoretical company out there who may or may not be using the Google solution, who may be, what would you say? Is there some way we can make this a little easier than it already is? Is there a simple answer to that incredibly complex question?
Of course. I think the goal should be to maximize the ability to iterate on big data, to experiment with big data. Right? Mm-hmm. That should be the goal. And a lot of companies don't have the core competency that surrounds a lot of big data projects. So if you go
in-house data scientists? Is that when you say core competency, you mean in-house data scientists, or not necessarily?
That's one example. When it comes to building big data projects on premise, for example, a lot of companies, their core competency is not building data centers, right? And so that is one distraction that a lot of companies fall into when they start their big data projects. They try to do it on premise, and there is a lot of overhead, a lot of time that requires before you're able to iterate on big data if you start on premise. So generally, and Gartner agrees with us, we propose that maybe once your big data project is mature, you can put it on premise. But to iterate on your big data, you should start in the cloud.
Mike, how do we cut through the friction? I mean, there's sort of an obstacle between us and the answers. How do we limit that obstacle for big data?
Oh, I get to solve the problem, right?
This is it. I mean, when it all comes down to it, we're looking to you, Mr. Matchett, for the answer.
Whatever you say.
Well, I mean, I think just to step back a bit. The way I kind of look at the problem is, it's hard to jump into big data and just mess around and get anywhere. And I think what a lot of folks that you mentioned have gotten a little disappointed with is they say, hey, it seems like a good idea. We've got a lot of data, I think. Let's just go mine it and pull the value out of it and build something in the back room and run with it. And that's really not going to get you anywhere good. And part of the problem is, as we've just already mentioned, it's a skills problem. You have to be able to approach these new. You got business analysts who understand how to look at data. They look at the data warehouse all the time. They look at the business intelligence. They want to make strategic decisions. But then they jump over and try to take those same skills to a big data set where you're really looking to say, hey, I want to do machine learning. I want to do predictive things. I want to impact operations in real time. And it's a little different way of looking at the world, and the different sets of data might be involved, and different architectures certainly. That they're not, IT certainly is not used to dealing with. I think that gives you some really big challenges right there. And at the same time, there's these enterprise IT requirements that everyone forgets about. So they go off and they build their big data project in a clean room, and then they go to put it in production. They realize, hey, wait a minute, what about security? What about data validation? What about quality, data quality? What about disaster recovery? What about all this other stuff? And I think that really throws a monkey wrench into ultimately getting the real value out of as referred to as a big data project. At the same time, I see things, as been mentioned, there's definitely ways to approach this to take some of that burden off of the rank and file company or community, and one of them is to use a service provider like Google or the number of I'll give you guys the credit here. There's a number of service providers that do that.
You get a free Google search, Mike, for that.
I get a free Google. I get a free ad placement maybe if I
okay. All right.
and there are tools now that can be brought to bear to track the data and to secure the data, scrub the data, keep credit cards out of it, and so on, so that you're not mashing up personally identifying information unknowingly. And I think the ecosystem is evolving really rapidly in that direction. So I think we're going to see good things coming out of the next year. At all the big data shows I've been to this year, it's finally been focused on security, which is, to me, a sign of maturity in the market. So you generally have to talk about performance first, which is what Hadoop was all about and MapReduce to start with. And then you talk about availability, which is what all the distros were about. Like, how do we make this system actually work and stay available? And now we're talking about security finally. It's like, how do I secure that data and protect it and bring it into production environments? So I really see the next year as something where a lot of people start to really, in bulk, get past that disappointment and into really recognizing value.